I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to come out of executive session.
Motion is second. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Present.
This is a vote to
Come out of executive
come out of executive session.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'll entertain another motion to seal the minutes.
Motion to seal the minutes.
Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. At this time, I'd like all persons to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I welcome back Councilwoman Luciano and ask her to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll entertain a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Public acknowledgements and commendations. I call on Councilman Navarro for proclamation.
Thank you. Tonight, the council is putting forth a proclamation proclaiming Monday, October 24th, 2011 as Food Day. And I'll just read it real quick. Whereas the health and well-being of our citizens is the primary concern for the city of Cranston. Whereas reducing obesity and diet-related diseases by promoting safe and healthy diets is a critical factor in improving citizens' overall health. And whereas supporting sustainable family farms and local agriculture benefits the local economy, and whereas obtaining fair pay and safe conditions for food and farm workers is beneficial for both the producer and the consumer, so that the foods we produce and consume is safe and fair for all, and whereas expanding access to food and ending hunger is a critical importance to aid those who live in food deserts, and whereas curbing junk food marketing aimed at children is of vitality important in order to combat rising obesity rates and raise a generation of healthy children, and whereas protecting the environment and farm animals is necessary to sustain future generations. So therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and the Cranston City Council do hereby proclaim October 24th, 2011 as Food Day in the city of Cranston, and we urge all citizens to participate in the following activities. Lights on after-school teen nutrition workshops on October 20th, 2011 from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Greater Providence YMCA at 155 Gansett Avenue in Cranston, and Supersize Me, Teen/Parents Movie Night, October 28th, 2011 from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Greater Providence YMCA on Gansett as well in Cranston. And this has all been signed by the mayor as well as the Cranston City Council, and I do want to say that this was put together as well by Rhode Island League of Women Voters, Marie Hennedy. We happen to want to participate. We feel it's very important, and if once we don't have to vote on this, correct? This is just if any of representation of the League of Women Voters is out there, they're more than welcome to come up, and I asked Councilman Lupino if that's okay for them to.
Yeah, as long as they're brief.
Hello, and this is Lisa Kennedy from the YMCA. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mary.
Just like to take a, sure.
We'll present this to Marie. How are you? Welcome and good luck.
Thank you.
And the wise and big part of Thank you.
Just like to take a brief moment to extend my thank yous to my colleagues, to the administration, to the staff members, the departments, and friends throughout the city who have, for their kind expressions and thoughts of sympathy for the recent loss of my dad. It really touched my heart to see a filled church on the day of his funeral and many from the city in attendance. So it meant a lot to my family, and it certainly would have meant a lot to my dad. I thank you for that. Another quick thank you to my colleagues in particular for fielding the calls, to the administration for coordinating the calls, and particularly to our public safety, including police and firefighters, our public buildings people, our highway people, and anyone else that pitched in during the recent fiasco that we encountered, the Hurricane Irene. It was a trying time for a lot of people in the city. I personally was affected by a large tree falling on my house. It could have been worse. I think the city did the best we could. There were several times during the storm where people were pointing fingers and comparing us to Warwick. But Warwick had some additional facilities that we do not have to handle some of the waste and the trees and all of that. So I want to compliment my colleagues and the administration for taking the cautious route in saying that we did as much as we could on the emergency end, and then we're looking to FEMA and REMA to help us get through the course of the rest of the cleanup. And the cleanup continues. So I'd just like to take a minute to thank all of you for all your hard work and input and the show that Cranston came together for this. That being said, the next section is for public hearings. This is on docketed items. I have a sign-up sheet here. So the first one on the sheet is Andrea Iannazzi, Chairwoman of the School Committee.
Thank you, Council President. Andrea Iannazzi, 51 Hollyhock Drive. It is my pleasure to be here this evening in support of the Cranston Teachers Alliance contract. I had the honor of defending that contract before the Finance Committee last week, and there were several great questions that were asked. However, I did just want to shed some brief history as to how the discussion started. As you know, Cranston was very fortunate to be recognized by Secretary Arne Duncan at the Labor Management Conference for our collaboration efforts. Our district has a lot of pride about the great work that we do. And to see our inclusion in that conference, we saw it as proof that we are one of the nation's leading districts when it comes to working together and collaborating for the best interests of students. The climate in Cranston City Hall towards Cranston Public Schools has not been warm recently. In fact, while Frank Lombardi and I were in discussions with the teachers union about monumental concessions, the teachers were being put down and disrespected in op-eds. Needless to say, it was extremely challenging to get the teachers to come to the table given that climate. But the teachers did what the teachers always do, and that is come through and put the best interest of Cranston students ahead of their own. Lots of questions were posed last week, and I think that the biggest point was lost. The CTA could have refused our cry for help. They were under an existing contract for this year, one that called for a 15% cost share and a 2.25% raise. Instead, they opened up their contract They came to the table and offered monumental concessions. They increased their cost share to 20%, they're taking a 2-year pay freeze, and they've slowed down the step schedule. This contract provides real savings for Cranston's taxpayers and once again displays the collaborative spirit of the CTA, coming through and doing what's best for the district. So again, I ask for your support for the contract that was negotiated in good faith by the Cranston School Committee, and when the time is right, the administration is present, and the administration and I will answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Dick Tomlins.
Mr. Tomlins, what color socks do you have on today? Very nice.
Richard Tomlins, 400 Farmington Avenue. Mr. President, and let me first offer my public condolences on the passing of your father. I would have been there. Paul called me, but it was the same day that my 85-year-old brother-in-law and his wife was flying in from Hawaii to celebrate my surprise 80th birthday party. But my sincere condolences. Also, I want to welcome you back, Leslie, because now it gives me the opportunity to say lady and gentlemen of the council once again. Let me first congratulate Paul Arquetto on his recent fundraising. Some of you were there. I thought it was an astounding turnout, Paul. I counted well over 100. You may have had some comps there, but I think it's a testament to what you try to do day in and day out for the citizens of the city, never mind just Ward 3. So I congratulate you. I come tonight to talk a little bit This is my personal award that was signed and personally delivered to my house by the Providence Journal. Now, some people have said to me, maybe you ought to just forget that. But two of the more senior business and political leaders of this city said, Dick, that's something that isn't right and you have to do something about it. So I've written my answer. I'm going to hand it out to you. It's been on projo.com. Mr. Whitcomb told me it'll be in the paper in a day or two. And I'll let you read it and make up your own minds.
Excuse me, Mr. Tomlins, what item is this? What docketed item is this that you're speaking about?
You didn't see it in the Sunday paper?
No, I'm looking for the docketed item. This is under docketed items, so are you speaking?
I'm sorry, I'm talking undocumented items. Is this only documented?
Docketed items.
I thought it said in the what's his name that it was undocumented.
No, documented items.
All right, well then I'll go back.
Okay.
All right, come up later.
Yeah, if you could.
All right, you got any other speakers?
I do.
Good.
Thank you. Don't forget your pants on fire.
That was easy.
Next one I have is Liz Larkin.
Hi, I don't have one of those. My name is Elizabeth Larkin. I'm a 7th grade social studies teacher at Parkview Middle School, but I stand before you as the proud leader, president of Cranston Teachers Alliance. I wanted to thank the council members that were at the financial committee. I know that Mr. Arquetto, Santa Maria, Pelletier, Councilman Navarro, Vivecchio, and Stikos, as well as you, President Lupino, passed through the teachers' contract. I have a few things I'd like to address as well. Andrea certainly addressed some of them, but because of the efforts of the school committee and myself, we had entered into discussions a long time ago because the climate in Cranston really wasn't that good and the economic crises all over the world. However, I think throughout this whole chaos that a lot of naysayers have chosen to attack public employees of all kinds, but mostly public school teachers. And they've used this opportunity, kind of seize the day, to blame us for everything. Well, I'm here to stand to say that we are not to blame for everything. We are citizens, we are taxpayers, we are daughters and wives and mothers, and we have had people in our families, maybe immediate, who have been affected by all these things as well. And we are people, and then we go and we work with the children of Cranston who are also suffering in a lot of cases. And we put a lot of that aside. So that being said, we had a contract opener. We were in a contract already that was going to expire on August 31st, 2012. And when we were approached, we spent many months discussing how we could actually help the school department. And as you know, in the wintertime, we had the global agreement in which basically we had really wanted to pay down the debt. And we were called very bad names for that because we obviously had some kind of ulterior motive. But all my thinking was that how can a school district ever move on when they're strapped to repay a debt to their own city? That grew into another discussion. And that grew into the discussion that's actually right in front of you right now. Mr. Councilman Arquette had mentioned about cost share and freeze. Yes, it is a freeze. We had a one-year extension, not a two-year extension, one-year extension to August 2013. We have a 20% cost share that went up from 15%, and that is a true cost share. That's not a flat rate. So whenever the health care goes up, it is a true 20% cost share. We were due in the third year of a contract with a lot of three-year contracts to get a 2.25 raise on all steps and on any advanced degree. And we have given up that raise. Councilman Vivecchio mentioned something that is definitely on the mind of the mayor these days, and that is about the pension. We have paid diligently into our pensions. We did not mismanage the funds. We entrusted those funds to be managed properly by the state of Rhode Island, and they were not. And we also did not control the economic downfall from the greed that we had in our investments. We had no control over that whatsoever. We've worked hard for the city of Cranston, and we've paid into our pension in the state. And then there was questions about the teacher's work day. The teacher's workday was reduced by 5 minutes, only 5 minutes, to allow for 16 one-hour common planning times to be added to the school year. We have some common planning time during the day, but this adds more common planning time with all the initiatives. I heard some people snickering about the 5 minutes. This is not taking any time away from any of the students' day. As a matter of fact, obviously, the students need all the time that they warrant in the school day. Basically, teachers aren't going to be leaving 5 minutes early anyway. But what I do want to address is the school day that the teachers work. The work day starts from the minute of the bell, and they have students in front of them. So all the preparation and all the work that's done is done before and after that school day, because they're on a stage that whole time. So teachers don't just work 6.5 hours. I know I'm going a little bit over President Lupino, but I just wanted to address all the things that came up. The steps were readjusted to a $500,000 savings for the school district. So we evened everyone out, and there were no big bumps in steps, okay? And also, someone asked about stipends being frozen. All of the stipends are frozen. And I think I've covered all of that. Now, I just want to say one other thing. This saved the school district over $5 million. And the Cranston teachers, during this whole period of time, were denigrated and demoralized publicly and maligned by Mayor Fung. He took every opportunity. He was on talk show, the radio shows, television. He was at rallies, State House, Board of Regents meetings, hearings on Mayoral Academy. He was in Cumberland, he was in Connecticut, and he was in New York, all with the mantra that we, the teachers of Cranston, were not innovative, were afraid of change, and did not hold high expectations of our students, especially our low-income and minority students. It was a very hostile environment that he has created, and it was undue demoralizing of the teachers of Cranston. Most of these behaviors that he exhibited would not be tolerated at all in our schools. But I just want you to know that cooler heads prevailed, and all we needed to do was just to say, we're moving on for the sake of Cranston Public Schools. And I felt, President Lupino, that I had to state that tonight, because throughout all of this, we could have said, forget it, they don't respect us. But that's not what we're about. We're about Cranston Public Schools. And we wanted to do everything we could to balance the budget and keep our fine schools going. And believe it or not, we are leaders in educational initiatives, and we are known nationally. And I just wanted the council to know that. Thank you for listening to me.
That was the last of the signees. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on a docketed item? Please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Albert Benetti, 24 Concord Avenue. Mr. Council President, members of the council. I just tonight have maybe one or two questions of you, Mr. Council President, just about this process. First of all, I know it was passed in the charter that the council now should approve school contracts. So my first question is, when this council approves school contracts or any other, well, I know any contract on the city side you are liable for, but does this now make you 100% responsible for these contracts? Because you're the final, like the final step. So, in other words, my concern is if I were a council person, if a few years down the road something comes up where they say, well, there's this and that pushed up a budget or caused some problem, would they now just have to come back to the city council, or do they revert to go back to the school department? And my other question is, has this actually passed state law? Because the school department, technically, from what I understand from all my years dealing with the city government, is pretty much its own department. So even if this council doesn't approve this contract tonight, since the school committee approved it, is it already a legal document? I mean, can anybody answer those two questions?
During discussion, we will address those.
So you do have answers for those questions? Because if I was sitting on the council, I'd want to have answers to those questions before I would approve any contract. Thank you.
Anyone else? There being, I'm sorry?
Good evening. As you know, I'm Olga Pagano of 96 Woman Avenue, Cranston. Again, we stand before you, not in opposition to C3 zoning of the applicant's Oak Lawn Avenue property, because the administration seems to be in favor, right or wrong, but we need to argue it. But to demand restrictions in the deed of said property of 1, no nightclubs, 2, no drive-throughs. Both venues create constant traffic, noise, trash, lighting, pollution in our backyards. As it is now, our backyards are lit up by signs, lights on Oak Lawn Avenue, and voices from a car wash that has an antiquated, obnoxious communication system. Think of what a drive-through would do to residents, particularly of Miles Avenue. Have you ever tried to access Oakland Avenue from Fred's Drugstore, or Campanella's Restaurant, or Dunkin' Donuts? My friend's house has been for sale 2 years because of the smell and lights from Campanella's. The applicant says they want to be good neighbors, a change from the past 10 years, when against city ruling, they cut down a buffer zone behind my house, and my neighbors never replaced promised landscaping or retainers at that time. And at my expense, we installed 140 feet of fence across my backyard. As for the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan can and has been amended, and this is one of those dire times. We implore you to deed restrictions on C3 zoning, no nightclubs, no drive-through. Vote with C3 deeded restrictions. Listen to the neighborhood residents who are voters and big taxpayers. We live here. Come visit. Let me show you our properties. Thank you for your time. Good evening.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll close that portion. Resolutions, there are no docketed resolutions this evening. Report of committees. Vice President Pelletier.
Thank you very much, Council
your
President.
report.
Yes. We had a resolution authorizing real estate and tangible tax abatements. Members of the council, this is in your packet. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Just report how the committee reported, and then I'll entertain the motion.
Okay. The report of the committee was a motion to approve and pass.
Okay, is there a motion from the council?
So moved.
A second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Resolution authorizing motor vehicle tax abatement. The committee met and recommended approval. Passed unanimously.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved and second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Tax interest waiver approvals as recommended by the city treasurer. Committee met and approved.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? There being none, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Ordinance 8-11-1-S or S. Ordinance ratifying the school committee collective bargaining agreements with the Cranston Teacher Alliance Local 1704 for school year 2011 through 2013. Committee recommended approval, passed unanimously. With one, actually, I think there was one negative.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Is there a second? Motion and second. Any discussion? Vice President?
Thank you, Council President. At this opportunity, I'd like to take the time to thank the school members of the school committee, Andrea Iannazzi, the current Teachers Alliance President, Liz Larkin. This was a historic moment for the city of Cranston. This is the first time that the City Council has ever ratified any kind of school collective bargaining agreement. This is going to be the norm for the rest of the contracts that come up through the city. So this is a job well done. This is a good contract. We all looked at it. Many of us liked it very much. You did a good job, and I just want to thank you. Go ahead, Council President.
Councilman Favicchio.
Council President. I'd like to thank Ms. Iannazi, Mr. Balducci, and Mr. Strump for getting the information that I requested and for putting up with my questions during the hearings. But I felt that we needed to spend a little bit of time, now that we have this all in our court, to deal with the contracts, to at least give the taxpayers some inside information into what goes into this and how difficult it is because of the difficulty in saving money in the budgets. And I was actually pleased to get, when I got the information, I had asked what the contract represented in terms of the total budget of the school department, and it was 63.6%, which was less than what I thought. And I think that in reviewing the entire contract, I think that the salaries are fair. I think the contract is fair. I think the 20% co-share is really a model for the city, and I think that the school committee and the school department and the teachers union did a good job in trying to come to something reasonable. I did look into the pension issue subsequent to our hearing, and I agree, Ms. Iannazi pointed this out, I believe, during the Finance Committee hearing, that the General Assembly really controls that issue, and I did some research into that, and I think, no one can control that. Obviously, there's some good and bad features to some of the ideas being tossed around by the state legislature, and we may get hit with an extra cost on the pensions, not by our own choosing, but by the General Assembly just deciding that we need to contribute more to help them with their deficit. So, and I don't think that we can, at this point, we can't look at that. I think that the contract is a good one. Now that I have more information, I'm a little more comfortable with a lot of the provisions, and I think it's a fair contract, and I will be supporting it.
Councilman Donahue?
Thank you, President Lupino, and I'd like to just apologize to Finance Chairman Pelletier and members of the Finance Committee for my absence at the last meeting, traveling back from business and a delay, unfortunately. Last spring, this council passed a budget in part based on a presentation that Vice Chairman Frank Lombardi made to the Finance Committee of Cranston East, assuring the council that they would be able to achieve concessions from the Cranston Teachers Alliance of $5 million. I know that there were several questions in that meeting in April about whether those could be achieved, and so I'm glad, and I think it speaks both to the leadership of the Cranston Teachers Alliance and its membership, as well as to the school committee that those, and the administration, that those were achieved. And when you look at those concessions over the course of the next 2 years of that contract, they do indeed amount to about 3% of the entire school's budget over those 2 years. So I'm not sure, I may disagree semantically with the chairwoman on the monumental piece of it, but I do think that it's a significant piece. I guess, and again, my one question regarding the contract, and I wish I had been here, I'm sure this was raised at the Finance Committee, if I may, through the Council President, either to Chairwoman Iannazi or to the Superintendent, who I know is here. Help me understand the clause that prevents the administration or the school committee from layoffs of teachers in this.
If I may, through the council president, there is it's not a minimum manning clause, but to ease the explanation, I'll call it that for right now. Basically, the contract says that the Cranston School Department has to employ 913 FTEs that are members of the CTA. Currently, we're staffed at, I think it's 928 FTEs that are members of the CTA. So going into next school year, we just have to have that minimum of 913 FTEs.
Okay, so it's that minimum, not the 928.
Correct. It's 913 was written into the contract.
I'm all set.
What's that? Councilman Stichels?
I also would like to thank the school committee, the school administration, and the teachers union for this contract, which I think was highlighted a couple of times, that no one had to make this agreement. This was a voluntary agreement to open up a contract and change it in some pretty major ways. And I would look forward to better relationships between the schools and the City Hall. I happen to think that public education is perhaps the most important thing we do as a city. And I think the antagonism has been unfortunate, and I hope that we can build going forward. So again, thank you to those who made this contract possible. I do have another point, and that is at the Finance Committee meeting, Councilman Arquette asked the council president if he planned to vote on this contract, and in light of the fact that his council president's wife is a teacher and covered by this contract, and the council president said that he did intend to vote for it and was acting in accordance with a Rhode Island Ethics Commission decision on that issue. I went online and researched that, read that decision again, and because I had read it when it came out, and I believe Councilman Lupino gave it to all members of the school committee when he sought it. And it's my opinion, Council President, that you should not vote on this contract because of this decision. And I'm just going to read the last paragraph of this 1.5-page decision. Accordingly, it's the opinion of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission that the petitioner may participate, petitioner being the council president, may participate in negotiations and voting with regard to the teacher's contract, provided that all members of that class are affected by the contract equally. However, if matters come before the petitioner that would affect his spouse specifically, or as a member of a subset of teachers, he must recuse in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 36-14-6. Additionally, the petitioner is prohibited from participating in the negotiation process since it is unclear at the onset of collective bargaining how the negotiations might impact his spouse. Now, this contract is not, I think that the council president is correct, that if the contract was a across-the-board raise, as contracts usually are, that he would be perfectly within the opinion of the Ethics Commission to vote on the contract. But this contract is a bit different, and it makes at least two changes that are specifically to a subset of teachers that Mr. Lupino's wife is a member of. First of all, as a top step teacher, the pay raises are different than the pay raises receiving that teachers who are not at top step receive under this contract. And secondly, as was mentioned by Ms. Larkin, there's a change in planning time for elementary teachers. So on these two issues, these are fairly major issues that affect a subset of teachers. And under this ethics decision, if a matter affects a subset of teachers, it says quite clearly, he must recuse in accordance with the law. So I would, before we vote, I would urge the council president to think that over, and I hope that he recuses himself. Thank you.
I'll respond. That ruling is 2-00329, okay? The subset that they spoke about, because I actually attended the hearing and got a personal explanation from Ms. DeAmber at the time, is subset meaning a particular subset. If it were only kindergarten teachers or only gym teachers, a small subset. The class of teachers that we're talking about is far exceeds the total number of subsets, meaning there are many teachers in that group, so it's a rather large group. As far as the second one you mentioned, Stephen, was the top step teachers. There
Top step teachers
are
and
more
elementary
top step
teachers.
teachers as a whole in the district than there are teachers within steps. And you mentioned something else.
Elementary.
So as a class of teachers, there are many. I don't have the number, but maybe Mr. Votto or Ms. Iannazzi has the numbers.
I do. The number of teachers at Top Step are approximately 660. And I just asked Ray about elementary, and he said over 500 teachers are elementary school instructors.
Yeah, so based on that, I stand on my, on the ruling as given by the Ethics Commission. To answer the question about Mr. Benetti, the ratification of this contract was the result of a charter change. So we are on the Cranston Charter to do this. That was scrutinized by the legal department, by the mayor, by the former council president, so it passed that muster. The ratification is only another step in the cog of the approval process before it becomes finalized. The care and control and the administration and direction of the schools is still under the school committee. That is by state law. Grievances, if there are any, still go through a particular process as outlined in the contract, which is through the administration, and if it gets to a particular point, still the school committee. So we have not given up any leeway or have we taken any control over the teachers. It's just another step in the cog of approval process. And we shall see in years to come what might become of this. This particular one seemed to be a slam dunk because it was a $5 million savings. I don't know what this council would have voted in different economic times with a $5 million increase. So it's just another step in the cog of the approval process. That being said, Councilman Santa Maria.
Thank you, Council President. Is that a yes? Are you voting for the contract?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay.
Based on 2003-29.
May I ask you a couple of questions? Only that, if I remember, Council President Lanny last year, his wife was a member of the Teamsters, and he recused himself from that vote. I also remember Councilman Favicchio recusing himself from the teacher assistant vote, if that's correct. He did. And Councilwoman McFarland recused herself from the vote out of committee. So I seem to see a pattern here where I think they're doing the right thing in not involving themselves in something when a family member is involved in a contract. So I would agree with Councilman Stakos. I think you should take a pass on this one.
Well, again, I'm going by a ruling I have from the Ethics Commission. That's they are the
wasn't that
ruling.
Wasn't that ruling when you were a school committee person and
Yes,
before
yes.
before
But
before the electorate voted 2-1 to allow us to ratify this contract? That was before.
Excuse me?
Things have changed since then, is what I'm saying. We now ratify teacher contracts.
This is again. I stand on the ruling.
Okay. I think you're on a slippery slope, but just my opinion.
Councilman Arquette.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to reiterate the Vice President's sentiments. This is truly a historical occasion where, first time, City Council is going to ratify union contract. I'd also like to pay tribute to the Cranston Teachers Union. During hard times, poor economic times, they've come to the table and they're willing to give up on a number of issues, and I want to pay tribute to them. Also, the hard work of the Cranston School Committee, the long hours that they had to stay in negotiations, along with Superintendent, Mr. Votto, Mr. Balducci. So it's a tribute to all of them working together to try to solve the financial restraints of the city of Cranston. I'd just like to make a couple of comments. There was a comment made about the reduction of the day, the 5-minute day. What people forget is, I think last year, the year before, the Rhode Island General Assembly passed legislation removing study periods from the day. So any teacher now has to teach right through. They don't have any prep time. There's no free period or prep time. When I was in high school, you were given at least 2 or 3 studies a week. That's no longer the case. So I don't have a problem with the 5 minutes. Also, we see that the savings is on the 2-year contract is monumental, and I heard numbers of $5 million. So, I'm going to support this contract. I think it's an excellent contract. As far as voting on the issue, the Council President, I think he should play it safe and just the impropriety of the fact that his wife's a teacher. The public perception. You want to take into consideration what the public perception was. It was only last year that I nominated a relative, a first cousin, to a non-payable commission, and the Council President was in opposition, totally opposed to that appointment. And it was a first cousin to a non-payable commission. So I wish the Council President would have second thoughts. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councilman Navarro.
Thank you. I am going to support this new teacher's contract that's before us, and I do want to just make a couple of notes. We did was voted unanimously in the Finance Committee, and a couple of points that the numbers are accurate as far as the savings that are being attained, and more importantly, it's in their budget that currently that they have. So it's very important that they did come to the table and help and give some concessions, because if not, we would have been in a big budget hole on the schools. So I do want to commend Elizabeth Larkin and the school committee and the administration, the superintendent, for putting this together, working hard, and truly indeed helping out not just the school, Cranston schools, but the entire city, because a debt or a deficit on the school side impacts the city entirely. And I do hope, and I want to reiterate some of the comments that Councilman Stichels had said, there needs to be better communication, and just to be able to understand that this is an entire budget of the city, not just separated. It's the schools and the city, and it's we all have to work together so that we can minimize the tax burden on the citizens of the city. And one of the big things that makes Cranston what it is and people move here is the school department. And that's one of the reasons why I moved to the city of Cranston, was because of the schools. And I have three kids that have all gone through the Cranston school system. And I can tell you that the teachers along the way have all been dedicated. We want to make sure that our teachers have fair contracts and deliver a quality education, which is very important. And so with that said, there is a historic moment as far as the city council approving the first teacher's contract. It was something that the citizens of the city voted to have a charter change, to have another legislative body, the city council, look at and ratify the teachers' contracts, and this is the first one before us, and I have to say that that this is one that I am proud to vote for. And lastly, I do want to just mention regarding the vote, and with Councilman Lupino and with his wife being a teacher, I would say that obviously, Councilman Lupino, you can do and vote as you may, whether you want to vote. But I mean, I was thinking in abundance of caution, you probably should recuse yourself from any type of perception or anything as far as having a family member, in this case your wife, being a teacher, which will directly affect, financially your situation. And people have recused themselves for a lot less that was indirectly and had no financial impact. And Councilman Arquette mentioned one where his cousin was put forth for a board position that was non-paying, and Councilman Lupino, yourself, may put some letters and saying that it was unethical to have someone from the council in the cut. So, I mean, I would say that just in an abundance of caution, that you should recuse yourself from this type of vote, just to relieve any perception of that. And other than that, I am going to be supporting this contract, and I want my rest of the colleagues to vote for it as well, except anybody that might have some comments.
Any further discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Moving on, Ordinance Committee, Councilman Arquette.
Thank you, Council President. The Ordinance Committee passed an Ordinance 4-11-5, Ordinance and Amendment of Chapter 17 of the Code of the City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Zoning, Change of Zoning, 800 Oak Lawn Avenue, and 828836 Oak Lawn Avenue, as amended in committee, 811-211.
Motion approved.
Entertain a motion to,
Motion approved.
Second.
the motion and second, any discussion? Council Vice President?
Council President, just a reminder that this is a continuation from last month's council meeting, and there were recommendations attached to this, the approval, or conditions attached to the approval. So I at this time, I wished if the clerk could read the noted amendment with the conditions, just so all the members of the council can be clear on what we're voting on.
The amendment in committee on August 11th was deleting from a C2 zoning district lots 282, 283, 378, 384, 385, and 387 on zoning plat 15/2 located on the easterly side of Oak Lawn Avenue and the southerly side of Miles Avenue, and by adding thereto the following: C3 zoning district with restriction of no drive-throughs and no nightclub, which will run with the land on lots 282, 283, 378, 384, 385, and 387 on zoning plat 15/2 located on the easterly side of Oak Lawn Avenue and the southerly side of Miles Avenue, and that zoning relief from the drive-through restriction is prohibited.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
And there was also further amendment from deleting the A6 zoning district for lots 372, 374 on zoning plot 15-2 on the easterly side of Oak Lawn Avenue. That was to a C3 zoning district.
So for clarification, that brings both parcels to a C3 zoning with restrictions.
with restrictions on several of the lots, not all of them. Lots 372 and 374 do not have the restrictions.
Why wouldn't, out of curiosity, why wouldn't it have the restriction on the whole, on both parcels?
I did not make the motion.
Okay, Councilman Santa Maria?
Council President, may I ask a question of the sponsor, please?
Sure.
Mr. Murray? I guess you're the sponsor, right?
I represent the applicant, I'm not
Okay,
the sponsor.
All right, well then, I'll ask you anyway. Do we know what's going there yet?
I'm sorry?
Do we know what's going there yet?
It's the same tenant mix that exists today with those uses that are allowed under the C3.
But you
that
know,
will be under the-
as any company going there, do you know what's going there yet?
It's a commercial shopping plaza. The uses that will be allowed in the C3 zone will be those that will go there, most of which are also presently included in the present C2 zoning, with a few exceptions.
So you don't know what's going there yet?
I guess not, because we have vacant space. I haven't asked today whether we signed any new leases, but...
As of today, no, you have no one?
No, but I'm not sure it's relevant to the question. I know that's your pet peeve, but I can't satisfy you because, we're in an economic depression and we have vacant space. I can't tell you what's going to go there.
Or just a concern of the neighborhood, but, all right, thank you.
Councilman Stichels?
Yeah, I don't know about other people, but I don't have a copy, at least I can't find a copy of this ordinance in front of us. I think that, the three of us are looking for it, and none of us can find it.
When the packet was compiled, apparently the Charlie was supposed to have been taken out, and the Rose took out the wrong one by mistake. I'll get you copies.
Could I just ask Mr. Murray a question also? Mr. President?
Yes, through the chair.
Are you agreeing with the restriction of no drive-through, no nightclub?
I'm sorry, I didn't hit the last part.
Are you agreeing with the restriction of no drive-throughs and no nightclubs?
You will recall at the last council meeting, I indicated that we had offered up the no nightclub restriction at the ordinance committee. We did not offer up the no drive-through. I indicated that, first of all, drive-throughs are not permitted in the C2 or C3 zone, and I didn't think it was fair to impose that restriction, and we did not support that particular restriction. But we proposed, because that was the initial feedback from some of the council members about the nightclubs. That happens to be a permitted use in the C3 zone. We weren't interested in having a nightclub. We offered to, we suggest the council put that restriction on the change of zone. The drive-through was not something that came from the applicants. Since they are not allowed in a C2 or C3 zone, I didn't think it was appropriate to put it on as a restriction. And we don't support that particular, because you're putting a restriction on something that doesn't exist.
Okay, and again, through the president, there was just Mr. Pelletier's point about the restrictions being on all the lots. Are you in favor of the no nightclub restriction on all the lots?
Yes, it would be inconsistent with our previous position. We said that the no nightclub, when we talked about it, was in the concept of both properties, the property owned by AGL Corporation and that owned by Montecatini Properties. We have two different applicants, so.
Which is all the lots that
Yes.
we're talking about. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Navarro?
Thank you, Councilman. I'm going to be supporting the zone change. There's a couple of things. As far as the restrictions are concerned, that's definitely part of the big reason I'm supporting it, is because it is going to have restrictions on that property. And on the properties, the affected parcels. And just based on legal counsel, these restrictions would hold muster if any, if the property would happen to change owners or anything like that. So, I mean, one of my concerns was that we put restrictions on the parcels, and then someone, down the road or whatever the case may be, if there's ever the comprehensive plan ever gets adopted from the state, and then there's a state law that says that we have to zone change everything according to the comprehensive plan, whether someone would have a leg to stand on as far as saying, well, we don't want those restrictions. And so I feel better about the fact that those restrictions would stay with the land, with the parcels. And another reason I'm supporting it is because of, the economy. You have someone come in and want to lease the property, and then it's pretty much going to be consistent, or there's some mixed use, but because it's not under the classification, you have to go to the zoning board, when it would be consistent with some, it just gives it more ability to lease out. And I think at these times, we've got to look at ways to be able to bring business into the city of Cranston, not make it harder. And again, every case is different. In this specific case, I don't think that there's going to be an excessive use as far as, or a high, I'm trying to find the right word in the planning vocabulary, but the intensity is not going to be one that I think is going to be any different than what's there now. So I am going to support this. We do have to find a balance in the city when it comes to properties that abut residential. I have plenty of areas in my ward that I represent that, we talk Reservoir Avenue, Park Avenue. I can list a host of roads that have businesses that abut commercial, residential. And, as a council member, I do a pretty good job making sure that whether it's our police, whether it's the administration, that if something does get out of control or there's that it gets handled. So I am going to, just based on the fact that we do have to find a balance. It's a main road, and you're going to have businesses to be attracted there, and we have to find the balance. But in this particular case, I will be voting for it because I think it enhances, what that business landlord is trying to do there in order to promote business, and it's not going to affect, I don't believe, the residential aspect of it in a detrimental way.
Councilman Favicchio was before you.
Thank you, Council President. Through the chair, I'd like to ask Mr. Murray one other question. Mr. Murray? With regard to the second part of this, where it deals with lots 372 and 374, do you know what part of the strip that pertains to?
That would be the property at 828, 836 Oakland Avenue. If you're looking from Oakland Avenue, the property to the right, where the church and the hair salon is.
Okay. And was it your understanding that these restrictions that we were talking about apply to the whole group of lots? Is that because that's the way I recall
we offered up the no nightclub restriction that would apply to all the lots. I didn't draft this ordinance, but
thank you. I just have a couple of quick comments because I've been involved in this from the beginning. I've spoken to the applicant and to many of the neighbors, and I thought that the ordinance as we have it presented here was a compromise which doesn't give the applicant everything they wanted, but it also protects the neighbors. And I think that the uses that are restricted are really uses that don't fit that neighborhood very well, and I drive that street every day. I think it would, if we had drive-throughs and/or a nightclub, you'd have people avoiding the area because it can get so congested. But obviously I'm in favor of the ordinance. I do think that the language was supposed to carry the restrictions on the entire group of parcels.
Council Vice President Pelletier.
Thank you, Mr. President. To err on the side of caution, I'd like to offer up a friendly amendment to include all the parcels in the ordinance to be counted as, with the restriction, I'm sorry, to be counted with the restriction. So that would include, what is it, 282, 283, 378, 384, 385, 387.
Can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
I believe the proper form would be to, on line 2 on the second page. I don't know why they're not consecutive from page 1 to page 2, but line 2 of the second page, which currently reads C3 zoning district lots 372 and 374 on zoning plat 15-2, located on the easterly side of Oakland Avenue, should, beginning on line 1 and going to line 3, should add, with restriction, a C3 zoning district, with restriction of no drive-throughs and no nightclub, which will run with the land, and then the lots 372 and 374. So if you make that in the form of a motion?
Okay, I'll make that in form of the motion.
There's a motion, is there a second? A motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Because I think it was the intent at the meeting, and I was at the meeting, that the intent was that no drive-through and no nightclub would go through the entire parcel. So that being said, if there's no discussion on that, Councilor Navarro?
I want to get a clarification on the C3 zoning, because Attorney Murray mentioned that C3 doesn't include drive-throughs, and my understanding is that C3 includes drive-throughs. So, the fact that and the ordinance that we have in front of us has, restriction of no drive-throughs and no nightclubs, which will run with lands 282, lots 282, 83, 78, 84, 85, and 87. So I just want to confirm.
I'll allow the attorney to answer.
Through the chair, nightclubs are a permitted use in a C3 zone, not in a C2, but in a C3. Drive-throughs under our ordinance, the schedule uses, are only permitted in C4 and C5 zones. They're not allowed in C2 or C3.
And I just want to get that verified by our city solicitor, and we'll just confirm that, just to double check that the C3 doesn't include drive-throughs.
While he's looking, Councilman, I just want to reiterate one thing that was brought up in the committee. And it was the committee's intention that this no drive-through run with the land, because if it were granted C3, what could happen is a variance for drive-throughs. Keep in mind, drive-throughs are automatically allowed in C4. They are not allowed in C3. We're trying to prevent someone from, in the future, going back on their word and trying for a variance, a C3 variance allowing a drive-through. This will go with the land, so that there will be no variances offered at any point in the future on drive-throughs.
Council President, while they're discussing that, can we take a 2-minute recess?
Excuse me?
Can we take a recess while are they discussing this?
I have the ordinance if the solicitors need it. If you need the schedule of uses, I have it.
Just give the attorney a minute to look it over.
Just another restaurant, okay. I gotta get more seats to go to
In both the C2 and the C3 zone, drive-throughs are prohibited.
So you don't need to put that in there. Is that what you're saying?
Any other discussion?
Just to get a clarification then on the amendment, it's just basically going to just say no nightclubs on all the lots?
Well, again, as amended, it specifically states that on lines 35 through 38, but now it also states that on lines 1, 2, and 3 on the second page.
So we're going to add the restriction to the other...
To lots 372 and 374, zoning plat 15-2.
Now, are we keeping this zoning relief from the drive-through restriction is prohibited? Is that something that's still going to... Because, I mean, drive-throughs are prohibited as in that zoning.
Right, but they're prohibited, but not, we're adding a caveat that says it runs with the land, so that there is no variance process that could be had to allow a drive-through in the future. That was agreed upon by Mrs. DeZoglio, Mr. DeZoglio. It was stated on the record, and again, that restriction would follow if they should sell the property also. All right, any discussion for the public? Councilman? Okay, it wasn't public, it was for the public. They were having their conversations back and forth, so. That being said, on the amendment, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And then on the ordinance as amended.
Discussion?
Discussion, Councilman Arquette?
Thank you, Council President. I think in these difficult economic times, Cranston needs to send a message business friendly, and I'm glad that we were able to meet halfway with the residents and the business. And we need to do more of that to draw business to Cranston. So I'm in favor of this and hope we support this act.
Councilman Stichels.
I've been in opposition in committee to this proposal, but I will be voting for it for two reasons. One is that the neighbors are endorsing it, and the second is that the legal questions that I asked were answered in executive session of the ordinance committee at our last meeting. So that was one of my goals. So I will be supporting it.
I have to ask at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion for one additional amendment, that at the end of that line 3 on page 2, easterly side of Oakland Avenue, reflect line 38 on page 1, and I'll entertain a motion for this. Zoning relief from the drive-through restriction is prohibited. So, I'll entertain a motion for that. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? That's just keeping in line with the restrictions on the first one. Okay, on the second amendment, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And on the ordinance as amended twice.
May I just say,
Hold on.
you went back, can you go back to discussion on the original ordinance? I agree with Councilman Stichels. I was against this, and I still have a pet peeve, as Attorney Murray said, about not knowing what's going there, and I still will. And I think we should have some idea of what's going there before we make a zone change. However, the neighbors seem to be for it, so I'm going to vote with them with reservations. Thank you, Council President.
There being no further discussion, clerk, please take the roll on the ordinance as amended twice.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, Safety Services and Licenses Committee. Councilman Santa Maria? Excuse me.
Reported out of committee was ordinance 8-11-2, ordinance and amendment of chapter 17 of the Code of the City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Zoning, 11 Comstock Parkway, zone change.
Second.
That was Councilman Arquette. That was voted in committee, and what was the vote? Was it?
That was unanimous, I believe.
Okay.
I believe it was.
So we have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
Under discussion.
Sure.
Again, just supporting this, and again, it's just part of trying to just enhance some of the areas that need economic development and give the landowners, businesses more opportunity. So that's one of the reasons why I'm supporting it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Councilman? Excuse me, but my script, has this been removed? I have on my script, I have an 8-11-2. What? Has that been removed? What? That's still showing on my agenda.
I think we did the no.
No, we voted on this one.
It is garbage.
No, we just voted on this one. Oh, you know what happened? 411 shows up here. Okay. All right, moving right along. Safety Services and Licenses Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Safety Services Licensing Committee meeting is met. Ordinance 611-6, ordinance amending Title 1032, stopping, standing, and parking on certain streets, stop sign at Heather Street and Brown Street. Council President, this was amended in committee on 9/12/2011 to match the traffic engineer's requests. Committee is met and recommends approval.
Motion approved.
Second.
The motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Anything else, Councilor Maria? Claims Committee, Councilman Stichels.
We have two claims that have been settled, one to Daniel O'Neill for damage to his car for hitting a pothole, and the second to payment to Verizon when a city vehicle hit a Verizon pole. So we're recommending you vote for these because they're already settled.
I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay. Public hearings. Pants on fire.
Mr. Tomlins.
Is that a wee-wee call?
Something like that.
Richard Tomlins, 400 Farmington Avenue. Well, this is the biggest mistake of my career so far. If I'd asked the president to let me go another couple of sentences, I would have gotten right into the school contract, etc. But I did feel obligated to speak about my pants on fire and the Dan York Show, if anybody heard of it. Nobody heard anything or didn't listen to that?
When was it on?
Well, the last one first. Dan proceeded, without giving me an opportunity, to call me a pig, un-American, and a few other things. So, since Richard has been involved in a few things in his life, I didn't give him a second, and I went right back at him, and we just went back at each other, talking over each other for at least a minute and a half. But I did get in there. I said, Dan, if that's the only thing you've got to say, that proves you don't have an argument. And that's true. When you use language like that, there's no defense to it. But that is now, I can't say any more than it's in the hands of the Citadel in New York and their law department. I think you all know the Citadel owns that station. When my honor is, I could take a lot of blows, but my honor is not going to be questioned. The same thing with the pants on fire. I have a copy here if anybody wants to see it, which is the reply to that. It should have been in the paper before now, but it was really through my negligence that it didn't. I've had a lot of situations at home with my wife, as most of you know, plus the fact that secret birthday, 80th birthday party was coming up, and somehow, some way, that took some of the time. But I want to get back to the contract. I think, I've watched that. I've attended every single meeting. I just want to say, without getting into the details, I think it was the right contract. To answer I think what your question was, James, the payoff, the trade-off was no layoffs for the reduction. And I followed Providence, I followed many different of the state contracts, whether they're teachers, police, or firemen, and that very often is in there, whether you and I approve of it or not. But they're always going to come back with something. However, I think the point of this whole exercise with the charter school, and I'll publicly take any credit for bringing it to the public's attention, even if it infringed on my honor, because it's something that had to be addressed. All you have to know what's going on now in the city, in the state, and in the country. You just saw where Obama now has decided on the No Child Left Behind to make another change. That just tells you that, as I have said from the very beginning, that any top-down never, never, never comes down, even if it was good intended. To give you a quickie, my son-in-law, Thomas DiLorenzo, Professor DiLorenzo, was going to be hired by Reagan. He already had the letter to come into the federal government, the OMB office, to follow every law to make sure the intended use was there and it met the financial obligations. That should be done. It got killed politically, even after they gave up their house and everything else. Until you raise your hand with the federal government, you've got nothing, even though he had the letter of commitment, salary and everything. But the point is this, that when any of those race to the top, any of those, this is what I think we all have to keep in mind. Certainly you folks, when you're dealing with the school committee. And by the way, I think we're getting to a point now where we're getting more goodwill among men and women in dealing together. Anybody that thinks you can separately operate a city with 50% here, 47 or 53, or whatever's been through the years, and you have two sides colliding, never, never, never will the public get justice. But to continue on the other, after that law becomes finalized, then the head of education, in this case Arne Duncan, on the last program that went through, after the Congress gets rid of it, it goes over there. Then they put out all the rules and regulations to follow that. Any resemblance between that and the intended use may be purely coincidental. So my idea is to get rid of all that stuff, get it back to where it should be. Get the superintendent, the school committee, you folks, all involved to run education in this city. You want to use whatever benefit you may get from the state or federal. I don't mean that. But until we get to that, we'll have this argument forever. I'm just hoping now, and somebody will say, and rightly so in their small thinking, well, they just came around the teachers unit because they were forced to. But let me tell you something, that's life, folks. I've been in business, and I wanted to hire somebody at a very high salary and caliber, but the board says we're cutting 10%. All of a sudden, I said I didn't need that person. So it's not unusual that you get that in a city government because you're only dealing with human beings. We all have to understand that. So I applaud the direction you're taking, the discussion that you've had on it. And I'll just say one other thing, Mr. President. I have no personal insight as to you voting, but perception is reality. We've all been faced with that, including me in the last few weeks. And I wouldn't want anything to go down that would take away from what we're gaining by you folks, in my vernacular, getting your nose under the tent now in the school department as to the finances. That might allow the opposition to what you're doing here to raise their ugly head and come after you on that basis alone. That would be sad if that happens. That would be sad if that happens. So I've seen that happen before, and we're all faced with perception becoming reality. I just put it out there as a comment. No personal thought other than that. But I thank you for the opportunity. Continue the good work. And I think now maybe, just maybe, and I don't mean that in a negative way, we might start to see a collaborative effort in this city. We won't get it by what happened with the charter school. That was an atrocious, and what Ms. Larson said in her remarks about what went on in Connecticut, New York, up at the State House and all that by Mayor Fung was absolutely incompetence. Because if you want to declare war, folks, just consider this. You declare war, you force people to take sides. Thank you.
Valerie Shuley, 27 Farm Street, Cranston, Rhode Island. I want to thank all of you that stepped up and asked for Mr. Lupino not to vote during that. I came from Wisconsin before I lived here, and in Wisconsin, to be a lunch lady, if I had a relative on the school committee, one of us had to go, just to be a lunch lady. And I've lived in 7 different states, and I cannot tell you how, this has bothered me for a long time, and it's one of those things Mr. Lupino and I are going to agree to disagree on. But I just want you to know there are citizens that find that I just have to question the ethics of the Ethics Committee. That's all I have to say, is I thank you guys for stepping up. Mr. Lupino has always done his conscience, is what he thinks is right, and I respect that, and we'll agree to disagree, but I thank all of you that said, maybe you should think about this, because there are those of us that are citizens who think it is dead wrong. Thank you.
Albert Benetti, 24 Concord Avenue. Mr. Council President, members of the council, I want to address a safety issue. Haywood Street off of Park Avenue is a one-way, and lately, about the past few months, there's some nights I come down and there are cars coming up, and most of it I think is due to cars are actually parked. If you're going south on it, going down, they're parked on your left-hand side facing up. Now, this is a one-way road, one-way street. So, and I know there are parking signs there, but those signs are for when people turn down to park on that side for the businesses that are there. So my concern is that maybe due to the Park Cinema being developed and what's happening, people are parking there facing the wrong direction coming up. I'm concerned that one night we're going to have a head-on collision there. It's getting worse. And when I come home 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and I see cars facing the wrong way, first of all, that's violating the law. I mean, I'll be very frank. There was one thing that I really liked about Michael Trafficante as mayor. Parking violations in this city and all those basic rules of keeping a neighborhood under control and being proper were strictly enforced. I know we've had budget cuts, but it couldn't hurt if you have a police officer, just come up that road around 8 o'clock every night, cars facing the wrong direction, just ticket them. I mean, it's a violation, and the worst thing is it's going to create a head-on accident. I mean, I came down one night and there's this car coming right up at me, and they're pretty much driving like in the middle of the road. It's almost insane. So I just want to address that, and specifically you, Mr. Navarro, because, Ward 2, that's a real safety concern I have. And I notice it more towards the weekends when there are, and it's great that the Park Cinema area is going great right now, but either keep it this way or either enforce it, or let's change it back to a two-way street. One or the other, but let's know so people know which way they're going. There's one other issue I'd like to address. First of all, as I told the council and the school committee, and not because I'm a wizard, the Merrill Academy was not going to pass, and it didn't. And it didn't pass because of what I said. The governor didn't want it. He had his head guy on his committee. End of story. One little letter. I don't want it in Cranston. Done. So, I know there was a lot of this brouhaha in this city. I know people like to have these little dog and pony shows make citizens feel they're doing something, but it was way over addressed. But the issue that came out of that, which the school committee, by having Mr. Bloom come up with his report, is that we found out that the percent change on the pensions is now creating an extra burden on the school department next year, or I don't know if it's even going to be preceding years. This pension issue is also going to affect the city. So my question tonight is, has the council put together a letter to address our senators and representatives and to hopefully have them vote in favor of some type of pension reform? Have you done that as a group? So you have a major issue You know what's happening at the State House. These individuals, although they are at the State House, are residents of Cranston. They represent Cranston people, and the City Council hasn't thought of sending them a letter saying, we need help with pension reform for the next year coming up. Would you, Mr. President, would you consider putting a letter like that together?
The council, the Cranston City Council has not, to my knowledge. However, the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, which we are a member, has been actively in that process. So when we have issues that go well beyond Cranston, they have been our advocates for that, and they have pushed and lobbied for legislation to address pensions.
That's nice, but see, I don't vote for them. You know, I have you people in front of me, and I have the representatives. And what I'm saying is, we came out of a meeting where people thought they were putting together an ingenious analysis to try to put down a charter school, and in their analysis popped up other issues, one that's a major cost to the city on just in one department, never mind on the city side. And all I'm asking is that I feel the City Council has an obligation to put together a letter to ask our senators and representatives for assistance in making sure pension reform passes. But I guess you don't feel that's an important issue. Thank you.
Anyone else on an undocketed item? Any items?
City Council officers and members, my name is Jean Powers, and I have lived at 30 Bretton Woods Drive for close to 3 years. Like many people in this economy, I struggle to pay my bills, including Cranston taxes. I make my living as a financial analyst, dealing with logical conclusions on a daily basis. I have formed an opinion regarding the handling of the large oak tree that fell across Bretton Woods Drive on Sunday, August 28th during Hurricane Irene. I formed it based on things I know to be true, as well as information that appears to be missing when it shouldn't be, or where more than one version of information exists. I have the right to my opinion, and I also reserve the right to adjust it should more accurate information become available. Until that happens, here are my observations and thoughts. I informed a patrolman parked on the street that the tree was going to fall across the road. His response was, "We can't do anything about it until it falls." I always thought that one of the duties of a police officer was to protect the citizens of the city. I don't think it unreasonable to have expected him to walk the 100 feet to determine if the street needed to be blocked off from traffic. Luckily, when the tree crashed down 20 minutes later, the last car to pass by was about 30 seconds down the road. The patrolman then called in the downed tree. I was informed by a local landscaper that it was my responsibility to have the tree removed. He offered to do the job for $1,000. I did not take him up on his offer. I have yet to hear from any city official that it was my responsibility, so I must presume it is not. After 2 or 3 hours, I called the highway department to ask that barrels be placed on either side of the tree so that drivers might have some warning once it became dark. The highway department came soon after with the requested barrels. Apparently, this information had not made it to them as a result of the police officer calling in the downed tree. Later that day, as a friend and I were walking to our vehicle, another patrolman pulled into the area to clear the way for a large commercial payloader coming down the road. He stated to my friend that he went through a lot to make this happen. Some might think that statement was the city machine at work, and that the officer's presence lent credence to that belief. I can't help but think, why would a patrolman feel the need to make anything happen regarding the tree? There was no accident, there were warning barrels in place, nobody had been hurt, and alternate entrance and egress was available. What was so special about this particular tree when there were so many other trees down all around the city? And why would he have to go through a lot to make it happen? The only conclusion that makes any sense to me is that this tree was special because someone wanted it, i.e. the local landscaper. My friend and I left for supper. Upon my return after dark, I was surprised to see the tree still there, only having been pushed across the road. Leaving was a mistake on my part, for I was informed by witnesses that both the landscaper and the payload operator had trespassed onto my property, as well as my neighbor's property, with the loader to move the tree. I was told he came close to hitting my garage. This caused additional damage to my asphalt driveway with breakage as well as stress cracks from the weight and operation of the commercial grade machine. My neighbor has indicated she has stress cracks in her driveway as well. The operator also damaged the base of a tall pine tree across the street during the move, compromising its future health and integrity. The following day, Monday, August 29th, the landscaper began to cut up the tree. When questioned, he told many people, including the Cranston Police, the Highway Department, and my neighbors, that I had contracted with him to remove the tree. Since he could not produce a contract nor reach me on the phone, he was asked to cease by police until he could. He left a note in my mailbox asking me to state that I had given my permission for him to cut up the tree. That evening, this same fellow told me that he often did project work with a payload operator and that the operator had been subcontracted by the city to move the tree. He said that he directed the operator on the best way to move the tree. He neglected to mention the falsehood regarding my purported contract with him. When I told him I would make some calls on Tuesday to determine the proper protocol for the situation, he insisted there was no protocol. I called the police department Monday evening to have it put on record that I had not contracted with anyone to do anything with the tree. The landscaper called me early the following morning as I was preparing for work to attempt to gain permission to cut up the tree before I could make any phone calls. He said he was just trying to help out his neighbors and was going to give the wood to people in need. At that point, I told him I thought it best to walk away. I then spoke with the Highway Department and informed them there was never any contract. When a neighbor called the mayor's office on Tuesday, August 30th, it was stated that there was only one company subcontracted to do tree work, and that was Northeastern Tree. That evening, 2 of my neighbors and I filed police reports on the incident. I question the judgment of both of these men for unnecessarily trespassing on private property, as well as the police officer on the scene who allowed them to do it. I question the capability of the payload operator in that he needed direction from anyone, much less a private citizen, on how to move the tree. I think the city should question whether this man should be subcontracted for any city project in the future, as his actions show he is more of a liability than an asset. On Wednesday, August 31st, the day after we had submitted the police report, my neighbor was informed that the payload operator had been subcontracted and that the mayor's office was unaware of that on Tuesday. I find that terribly convenient. I spoke briefly with my councilman on Thursday, who told me to expect a phone call from the police department. That call never came. Later that day, copies of the police report were delivered to my neighbor. I found the report to be very disappointing. It was merely a regurgitation of our 3 statements. If there was any investigation conducted associated with the situation, it was not apparent. Someone deemed it a civil matter. The police officer who delivered the reports explained to my neighbor that if money had changed hands, it would have been considered a criminal offense. So I guess my cautious nature saved the landscaper from having a record. When a neighbor questioned the payload operator himself as to who had given him the okay to move the tree, he couldn't name a name. He stated that the police fetched him. This substantiates the comment made by the police officer regarding going through a lot to make this happen. When I add up all this information, my conclusion is that this all began with one person who sought to benefit himself at the expense of others. I believe the tree was moved for the convenience of the landscaper. I believe this was a case of reciprocity involving a number of people. I believe that once the situation fell apart, those involved closed ranks to protect each other and may have influenced others to cover for them. There was a complete disregard for any rights we as homeowners and taxpayers of this city may have. I understand that Mayor Fung expects all officers and employees to act with the highest ethical conduct and with accountability to the residents of Cranston. I am not convinced that this is what happened in this instance. Thank you.
Do you have a cop? Excuse me, to the clerk. That's a copy of what you just read, is that what that is?
Good evening. My name is Alice Petrone. I'm the neighbor next door at 24 Bretton Woods Drive. The tree fell across my driveway and in the process took all the wires from my home along with it. During the storm, someone with a payloader from the city did approach to check on the tree. Also, an employee of National Grid came and deemed the tree a priority to be moved by the grid. I was informed at that point in time that when the tree was removed, my wires would be connected so that when the line came up, I could have my service along with my neighbors. Because of this man's zealousness, because of the unethical and unconscionable actions of the people involved in this, my neighbors received their service on Tuesday morning at 6:10 a.m., and when I went out to the grid men who were connecting the lines and bringing up the power, I was told that because the tree was moved, my house was no longer a priority. My service was not turned on until Saturday evening at 6:30 p.m. All my services were not restored for a full week later. When the grid came to connect my electric, these men who moved this tree, with or without the sanctions of the city, did damage to those wires. The men who came to connect my wires found them to be too short because part of the wires were in the tree. So they in turn had to take a cable and use the wire that they had, being that they were from Michigan, and the wire that they used wasn't compatible with the wire that the grid uses here. So basically, my house has been Mickey Mouse to the pole. I have had blinking lights in the house. It has been an ordeal that I don't think anybody should have to go through. Because I was without electricity for so long, I had to move out of my house and move into a hotel. I had no ability to cook, no ability to do anything. I had no internet, no phone, no anything. And on top of all this, I was sick and ended up in the hospital. This man, in his zealousness to obtain the free wood from this tree, is going to end up costing the city money. The grid would have taken this tree and done what they did at the Meshanticut Valley Parkway problem, where the tree took down all the wires. I went personally to the supervisor at the Meshanticut Valley Parkway project, and he told me that as long as that was a priority, they would connect the wires when the tree was removed. The moving of this tree and the pulling of those wires out of that tree did me more damage than anyone else in that neighborhood, and I'm still dealing with it. So we have brought this to the attention of the mayor's office through emails. I have spoken to Councilman Santa Maria. He's well aware of this. I've spoken with Council President Lupino. He's well aware of this. And basically, we're getting lip service from the administration. Now, my driveway needs to be fixed. My insurance company won't cover it because the payloader came on that property and it belonged to the city, because by virtue of the fact that this man has been subcontracted, even though he can't tell anybody who told him, I spoke with him directly myself, couldn't give me the name of the person who authorized him to move that tree. Everything is a mystery here. The only mystery I find, and it just doesn't cease to amaze me, that in this day and age, where we all call for a level of accountability, that this situation is a situation where everyone's closing ranks and protecting each other. It is the good old boys network at its best. And it shouldn't be tolerated. It shouldn't be tolerated by the citizens. Shouldn't be tolerated by the council. And we want answers. I want my driveway fixed. I just want to be able to live in my house. I don't want people trespassing on my property with a payloader when I'm not there to authorize it. And we went through a lot of steps to make sure that that tree was marked with barrels. Richard was there. One of the supervisors from the highway department came. There were barrels put at Sagamore Road. There were barrels put in front of the tree. The tree was set for the night. There was no reason that tree had to be touched. None whatsoever. It was secured. Other than the fact that this man wanted that wood. And he didn't care what he did to get it. He lied to a police officer. The police officer, when I brought that to his attention, he said to me, well, there isn't anything I can do, it's a civil matter. Now, I don't know about you, but if I lie to a police officer, I'm sure I'm going to be charged with that. Why?
Now, Alice, you've gone beyond the time that we usually allow. So
Okay.
if you can kind of sum up, because some of the allegations you're making would have to be made at a particular time, at
Okay.
a particular venue. So we
right.
can make no decision on this other than to say, we would like the administration to respond to you by a certain time or...
All right, can we set a time frame for it? Because they've known about this now, it's going on nearly a month. They've been well aware of this,
Are you done with your part of the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
basically. But can I just make one more point before you cut me off? I just want the council to understand that we made a formal complaint. The payloader operator was never called in and questioned regarding the matter. The landscaper was never called in and questioned regarding the matter. We were dismissed and put off and just told that this was a civil matter. Personally, don't think that that's what the police should be doing when a citizen makes a formal complaint. And that's basically it. Okay? If we could put a time frame on this, looking into it, or it would be wonderful.
Does anyone from administration wish to respond briefly? Councilman Navarro.
Thank you. Councilman Lupino, I'm hearing everything the neighbors are saying here regarding that tree, and we're hearing what they have to say tonight. But I do want to find out if they've received any kind of options, and if not, one of them would be through our claims department, if they feel that there's liability on the city regarding something that we were negligent in, whether it was through the highway, police. I'm hearing so many different departments, but as far as, and whether this person, whoever was doing this, can be sought after, but there might be an option that I'd like to just through the chair, just say to the constituent, to the resident, is that they can file a claim through the city, and the city will do its, and then that committee, which is on the council, there's council members on that committee, can get as much information as they can and try, and on our end as a council, through a committee, find out and try to get to the bottom of everything that's been alleged tonight, as well as whatever, again, I don't know if the administration are doing their formal process or investigation in council management, but I think on the council side, I think that's something that we're able to do. We would have to start the process of...
I'm aware of the claims process, but what I'm really concerned about, because the driveway can be fixed, okay? What I'm most concerned about is the unethical actions of people in the administration and the way the police conducted this investigation, it just was not in our best interest. Those are the things I'd like addressed by the council.
Mr. Cordy?
Anybody?
Thank you, Council President. Yes, we are aware of this situation. It's currently under review by the Solicitor's Office. As soon as he's concluded his review, we will be in touch with you, ma'am.
Okay. Well, that isn't enough, okay? That really isn't enough. That's why we're here. That's lip service.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rick. Richard, do you want to ask me a question?
Tony, can I just say that
Hold on a second. No, wait.
I was making...
This is public speaking on non-docketed items, so if you want to add a comment under communications, is there anyone else that wishes to speak on a non-docketed item?
Can he ask me a question if he wants to?
No,
No, not at me.
No, this is public speaking. No, this
All
is
right.
not a question and answer.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
It becomes an open meetings issue because it's not on the docket, so back and forth and requests. I mean,
Do we need to put it on the docket?
no, you're at this point you have to enter it as a claim.
Okay.
Otherwise, it does become, and that would be for damages. Otherwise, it does become a civil matter. That's what they've been. What's your point of order, Councilman?
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to discuss this. I think it's a major problem with hurricane.
It's not,
Chaos going on in that area, and I'd like to get to the bottom of this, and if someone would second my motion, we could take a vote.
I'll second.
hold on, I didn't recognize the motion yet. Hold on.
Under the open meetings law, you cannot engage, no one's been posted as to what's going on here. If it wanted to be put on a future council meeting, it was put on the docket for discussion, that would be appropriate. But a dialogue for members of the public, you exceed, and there's an Attorney General's opinion on point on this, that it is not to be a dialogue back and forth if the public hasn't been given advance notice. No, I'm not saying she's out of order. I'm saying that the law does not allow you to engage in a continued dialogue without giving the public notice that this is going to be on the docket. That's what I'm trying to say.
Council President.
Yes, Councilman.
Request to put this on next month's docket under council communications under my name.
Sure.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Any,
No, thank you. We're happy to come back and get to the bottom.
Council President?
again, just a clarification. The claimant in this case has the right to go through the process as prescribed.
Okay,
If they choose to not do that and want to have it discussed publicly, that is their option. But I still believe...
I have a question.
Can I rewind just a second? I told them both when it happened that they had the right to file claims. They both know that they have the right to file claims. They've known that since day one.
Exactly.
Okay.
That wasn't the consideration coming. I do intend to file a claim. That's not the issue. Right? The issue is the unethical actions of people in the administration and the closed.
I have to stop discussion. You can't talk from the seat.
Okay.
I'm going to stop discussion at this point because I'm being advised by our counsel that we have to stop discussion because this is not, she brought up issues and it's only her ability to speak. By us having a back and forth, they allowed one issue to be addressed that the administration said that they would answer you. But anything further than that is going to cloud the issue, and it might have negative implications for the city or the claimant. So I think it's in the abundance of caution that we stop the discussion at this point in time. Your letter has been received. Your concerns have been noted. They became part of the record, and from this point, we'll wait for administration to respond on how this should occur. Councilman Navarro.
Thank you, Councilman Lupino. I do have to, raise some concerns as far as, what the resident has brought up. As a council member, I'd like to...
Stop.
I'm a little...
Stop. Stop.
Excuse me.
I
can speak on the way right now.
Councilman, it is in violation of the Open Meetings Law.
You're out of order.
Hold on, I just want to say something. Hold on. I don't even want to be cut off. I just want to say that I'm very disappointed with the administration, Jerry Cordy coming up here and saying that it's under the solicitors. And I think I have an opinion on this. I find it that the administration has taken so long to respond to a constituent and constituents that have been affected the way they have. So I'm not talking about the liabilities of the city, it's under solicitor's opinion. What I want to state as a council member here tonight is that I find it kind of surprising that a month has gone by and the constituent hasn't had a response formally from the administration. I think I can voice that opinion. Can I, Solicitor?
Councilman, I disagree. I believe that the law is very clear on this. There's an Attorney General Lynch's opinion that when the matter is put up before here and engages in a dialogue and the public has had no notice, there may be other people who have something to say about this. I think Councilman Santa Maria's suggestion that this be put on as a communication for next month to get a full report and give the public an opportunity to come in here and comment on it, as well as the council, is the way that the law requires it to be handled.
My opinion is that I'm disappointed that it's taken this long for someone from the administration to give a constituent answers. And that's all I say. I think that they deserve better than that. And I'm surprised that the administration has been very quick to get back to people responsible regarding the hurricane. And for this to have gone on and come to before us tonight on the public comment, I think that the administration, something they should have addressed as soon. That's all I have to say.
Could potentially cause taxpayers liability with our foundation. And I think it's distressing to want to discuss something in public without knowing the facts about individual employees which may infringe, which cannot be discussed in public. They have certain rights hearings or things of that nature that cannot just be discussed in public. Okay? So what I would direct them to do is that if you want the city to do something for you, the right way to do it is not to engage in a gang mentality, is to file a claim so that our office can properly evaluate it and look at it in terms of what your damages are and what we can do about it. That's how we seek redress from the city. It's got nothing to do with riling people up about what may or may not be done.
Excuse me, I'm not here.
And innuendo about what the administration has or hasn't done.
I have one thing to say, okay? And I will say nothing else.
Council President.
I find your comment reprehensible. That's right. You've had 1 month to deal with this. You've sent it, let me finish, please. I let you finish. I let you have your comment, please let me have mine. Please be a gentleman and sit down. Please be a gentleman. Really?
You're both out of line. Please sit down. This discussion is ended. This discussion is ended. We are on to something else.
I have only one thing to say, Tony. I've known you for a long time, and I'm going to say this, and I don't care well, listen, I'm going to say it. Had that tree not been touched, that wouldn't have cost the city 5 cents. That's your fault.
What's your point of information, Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. President. From my understanding, these citizens have waited 30 days already. We're going to put this now in the next council meeting, 30 days. Can you request a special session of the city council to meet within 7 days or 14 days? I think they were put in front of Public Works. I think they waited long enough, Council President. I think it's up to you to stand up and let's get a hearing on this as soon as possible. Thank you.
You cannot circumvent the processes that are in place. The process is in place. Request. There are certain allegations made that require a due process for those employees mentioned. You cannot discuss that without their presence, and it needs to be in an executive session. The claimant still has the opportunity, as Ms. Patron knew from day one, that she could file a claim, and the rest of the process will go through as prescribed by law. But, under advice from both the council's attorney and the city solicitor, discussion on this is ended right now. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? There being none, election of city officials, I don't believe there are any. Are there any reports of city offices?
I have none.
Executive communications, report on hiring of special counsel consultants, Charter Section 1505.
Council President, we have no report on consultants. However, I would like to point out that the next item on here, a request from Captain Stephen Callahan for a disability retirement pension, has not been thoroughly vetted yet, so therefore we beg more time to evaluate it.
So noted. There's also a claim, settled claim on here.
Mr. Council President, this was I believe it was a rear-end accident. Liability was not at issue. It was a settlement for $6,000 with Paul Cantor and his client. Pretty much a settlement for the amount of the medical bills. There were no lost wages. And that's the only one that was settled this month.
Okay. Under Council President Communications, update from the administration on the meeting with Johnson and Wales.
This is a continued work in progress. The mayor and I are continuing to speak about this, and we should have an answer with the proposed strategy, perhaps to be discussed in executive session. I will contact Council President within 1 month on that one.
And do you anticipate that by the next council meeting or before the next council meeting?
I think either that or we'll have a discussion on it.
Okay. So we'll look forward to that discussion. That's all I had right now. Council member communications, Councilman Stichels.
I had a question for the administration regarding the status of repainting the various crosswalks near schools and in the city. When I last asked about this, I was told it was done every year, that the work generally started on the eastern side of the city and went to the western side, but unless I'm mistaken, it hasn't taken place, and I'm just wondering what's happening. Thank you.
Through Council President, to date, there's only 11 public schools and parochial schools left to be crosswalked. Is this on?
I can just about hear you.
There are 25 public and parochial schools in the city that we do the crosswalks. We've done them all but 11 at this point. The normal painting begins in June, but it's also weather related. It's got to be clear and dry in order to do this. And as you know, in June, we had a microburst and some very heavy rains, and then that was followed again in September with the hurricane. So we've been very limited in the number of painting days we've had, but we're hoping to have this cleared up within the next 2 weeks and have the balance of them painted.
Mr. President, may I ask a follow-up question? So is the city doing what it's always done? It's just because of the weather, it's a bit late?
That's correct, sir.
the same number of crosswalks, and
That's correct.
thank you.
Is it also the reason that we've had to delegate certain, Jerry?
I'm listening, sir.
Is it also the reason that we had to delegate certain duties to some of the public buildings people that would, or the traffic engineer's office to do storm-related cleanup?
Absolutely, sir. That was part and parcel of our delay.
Are you all set, Councilman Stichels? Councilman Santa Maria?
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to get an update on the traffic light. We're scheduled for spring 2012. The last I checked, we were finishing up a survey of the Walnut Grove Elena Street confluence, if that's correct.
Yes, sir. Since then, we have met with DOT. We've gone over the preliminary design. We've made suggested changes to it, which they did agree to. And as a result of that, this week, we're anticipating a letter from DOT outlining that agreement between ourselves and RIDOT. From that, the agreement going forward is going to be the city is responsible for the design and construction of the Elena and Walnut intersection, and RIDOT will be responsible for the design and construction of the signal and the geometry changes at Atwood. The timetable still looks as though the actual contract, construction award will be in 2012.
Okay, so we'll start our end of the construction probably in the spring also. 'cause
Yes, sir, that's
we're
correct.
coming in on the winter time, so we won't, the light will come after we finish our confluence and the leveling of the area.
That's correct.
Thank you. I also, while he's up here, Council President, may I just add one other? When
Go ahead.
when's
Sure,
the ribbon cutting on the salt pond, Jerry?
You know, that's a good idea. We hadn't thought about a ribbon cutting. That could be fun. We are at a point right now where we could put salt in, but we haven't because we still want to install some interior lights to make the visibility a little better, and it's easier to access the roof without the salt. But we're hoping by next week this time we can start putting salt in there.
So we're ready for the winter.
Yes, sir.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Council Vice President.
Thank you, Council President. I have just four matters under Council Communications. Briefly, Mr. Cordy, I passed a resolution regarding a traffic report for Castleton and Peveril. Do you know the status of that?
First of all, please forgive me. That doesn't show on my docket.
No, it's under Council Communications. It's, yeah, you know what? Half of them weren't printed. It's just kind of like last-minute thing.
Okay, so this was added after
Yeah.
the printing.
Do you know anything about it?
Yes, sir, I do. Did Director Lopez reach out to you on that issue yet?
No.
Then I will do that first thing in the morning.
Okay. That's number one. Number two, actually, you answered for me today on the phone, but could you just brief the rest of the council on the storm debris cleanup?
Yes, and it's a little confusing to describe, but basically the storm cleanup was approached on a snow plow district basis is how they approached it. And some of the confusion in regards to whether or not a particular street had been completely cleaned or wasn't completely cleaned came from the fact that some of these roads cross boundaries into other snow districts. So when they reported that, let's say Pontiac Avenue, or a better example would be 7 Mile Road. When it was reported that 7 Mile Road was complete, well, it was only 1/3 complete because there's actually 3 snow districts on 7 Mile Road. But as far as the final sweep of the city, and when I say the final sweep, where we grab everything we can grab going the first time through the city, I didn't get today's report yet because I was here, but they were hoping to complete that today, if not by noon tomorrow. And then what they do is they begin the second round, which is the phone calls that came in that said, "You missed my pile." So they'll be chasing those back. And then the third go-round is there's specific trees in the city that were on city property, landed on private property, and we will be going back out after those.
So when we have constituents that contact us regarding, say they missed my house, they missed my bushel of trees, we turn that into you and you'll send them out there?
There's a published hotline for that.
Okay.
There's a debris hotline. It's
So
up on the website.
send them to the hotline.
Absolutely. If the trucks have already been down their road and there's still debris left behind. Most of the calls that we've gotten so far with missed debris really comes from the truck driver's unfamiliarity with the city, because there's always a lot of little nooks and crannies, and then some of the ways to get back into the city, to a city street from, say, Warwick or Situate. So those little pockets we're paying attention to now and getting those cleaned up.
Okay, and I have just two more things. The next one is, I'm working with school committee member Janice Ruggieri on an issue on Metropolitan Avenue down by the high school. There's a woman there that claims that there's a piece of property that's city-owned, partially city-owned and partially owned by Providence Water, that is overgrown with trees and debris and trash, and Providence Water isn't accepting responsibility for it. It's technically part of the school property, but they don't have the means of cleaning that up. They were wondering if we can possibly pitch in a little bit of a hand and help out the school department on that.
Has this been brought to our attention yet,
It
Councilman?
has been brought to a couple people's attention, yes.
Okay. Could you tell me who?
I believe Carlos knows
Carlos?
about it.
Okay.
Robin actually knew about it, but obviously she's gone. So
Okay, I will follow up with you on that as well tomorrow.
Okay, all right. And the final thing, and this is real simple. Jerry, do you know what happened to the city council sign out back here, the one that was right next to the mayor's spot? Did somebody take that down?
I was here Sunday of the hurricane, and I parked my car way out here in the middle to make sure the big tower couldn't fall on it. And after the biggest part of the wind was over, I was going to move it back to my spot because I was coming up to my office about 9 that evening, and I noticed that the hurricane took your sign out.
Just curious. It didn't end up in your garage or anything, did you, city council?
No, it was still laying there last I saw. Is it completely gone now?
It's completely gone.
Okay. We'll get you a new sign.
Just a quick note that any calls coming into the City Hall, there is an announcement. That's the first announcement you hear, is the hotline for the storm-related cleanup. As we will change it to snow remaining for cleanup on the storm-related. Councilman Arquette.
Thank you, Council President. I'd just like to request for next month's meeting on communications, if the Director of Administration would care to discuss Providence Water, its progress in my district in Ward 3. Also, the bike path that connects, I guess, Bain and goes towards Weston Cranston. And also, I'd like to discuss the feasibility of speed bumps on Harmon Avenue. I'd like to discuss those communications for next month's council meeting.
You can, you have until the Friday prior to the meeting. I think we said, is it Thursday or Friday, Rose?
I'd just like them on the docket. I can request them on the docket tonight.
The docket goes out on the Thursday, so
Excuse me?
the docket goes out the Thursday before the meeting, but I've made a note.
You can make notations and have that.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Your last request was speed bumps. I didn't get the name.
Feasibility of speed bumps on Harmon Avenue.
On Harmon?
Harmon Avenue, yes. Harmon. Also, Council President, through the chair, I'd like to ask Pat Quinlan a question, please.
Well, just to your other questions on communications.
Oh, the other request was,
Yeah,
the first was,
No, I understood them, but make them more specific so they can be prepared to
Oh,
answer
in writing?
questions. So
In
direct
writing?
those to the administration, and they'll be on the docket as
Okay.
a general, but you'll
Thank
have
you.
more specifics and they can
Thank you.
answer more
Through
specifics.
the chair to Mr. Quinlan, Pat, council rules state, is it 5 members of the council, if they request a council meeting, it will happen, is that correct? Council rules, correct? So if 5 members request a meeting will occur. And what's the time frame? Is there any time frame in that?
There's always a time frame. There's always a time frame. We have to comply with open meetings, postings, and on the website.
So what's
And it also, if it's a special meeting, it has to be advertised.
Right, and what's 7 days from the request, or 5 days from the request?
It depends on when you want to call the meeting. We advertise in the Herald. The Herald's deadline is a Tuesday, so
Okay, thank you.
You could have it later in the week,
Right.
depending on when I get the
I
information.
understand. So theoretically, we don't have to wait 30 days, we can go 14 days or 15.
That's correct, and I believe
Thank
it is 5 members.
Thank you. So 5 people agree.
Are there any other council communications? Councilman Arquette, are you all set?
Sounds like it.
Yeah, thank you, Council President.
Okay, is there any old business? Introduction of new business.
Proposed ordinance 9-11-1, an amendment of Title 9.08 of the City Code. This pertains to offenses pertaining to property, tree removal, and pruning. This is a new ordinance in conformance with the state statute requiring notification to the public when a tree is going to be pruned or removed and allowing for a hearing if requested by one of the parties, one of the members of the public. That's to be referred to Public Works for hearing on October 13th. Proposed ordinance 9-11-2, an amendment of Title 15.12 of the Code of the City of Cranston entitled Housing Standards for Non-Resident Landlords. This ordinance requires non-resident landlords to record in land records their designated agent for in-service. That's to be referred to the Ordinance Committee for hearing on October 13th. Proposed ordinance 9-11-3, an amendment of Title 8.40 of the Code of the City of Cranston entitled Security Alarm Systems. This ordinance and proposed ordinance 9-11-4, amending the schedule for the alarms. The first one establishes, changes the notification to the offender from certified mail to regular mail. The second ordinance 9-11-4 designates the use of the fines collected to be reserved for municipal vehicles. Both of those ordinances are to be referred to the Finance Committee for hearing on October 13th. Proposed ordinance 9-11-5, an amendment of Title 10.32 of the Code of the City of Cranston, has to do with the stop intersections enumerated. This is clarification of some of the stop signs that were posted when we did the missing stop sign ordinance. This is to be referred to Safety Services for hearing on October 3rd. Resolution of the City Council requesting the General Assembly amend the Mayoral Academy statute to require approval by a city or town council. This is to be referred to the Finance Committee for hearing on October 13th. Then we have a request from the Cranston Western Little League for a right of first refusal agreement with the city for use of the fields, and this is to be referred to Public Works Committee for hearing on October 13th. We have the following new claims. These are to be referred to the Claims Committee for hearing on October 3rd. A motor vehicle property damage claim of Veronica Lima from an alleged incident on August 8th, 2011. A property damage claim of Diamante and Marilyn Santilli for an incident on August 28th, 2011, allegedly caused by a fallen tree. A motor vehicle property damage claim of Vincent Ferdinandi from an incident on August 20th, 2011, due to an alleged pothole. Motor vehicle property damage claim of Jody Codwin from an incident on August 16, 2011, allegedly caused by a pothole. A motor vehicle property damage claim of Stephen Gentile from an incident on August 16, 2011, allegedly caused by a pothole. A property damage claim of Christopher Sweet from an incident on August 25, 2011, allegedly due to a fallen tree. Property damage claim of Robert Collardo from an incident on August 25, 2011, allegedly caused by a fallen tree. A motor vehicle property damage claim of Paul Mahoney for an incident on August 28th, allegedly caused by a fallen tree. A motor vehicle property damage claim of Travis Midiverier from an incident on September 7, 2011, allegedly caused by a motor vehicle collision on that date. I have nothing more.
Motion to refer all those items to proper committee?
Second.
Motion and second. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Miscellaneous business on the clerk's desk. There's a reference to a resolution about the pedestrian access.
Council President?
Councilman Santa Maria.
Getting back to the Bretton Woods issue, is it on next month's docket under council communications, or are we going to have a special meeting? I was kind of confused on where we ended up with that.
It depends on what you want to discuss, because if you want to discuss the claims, it's got to go through Claims Committee first. If you want to discuss the allegations, that has to be presented through administration and the solicitor, because there are personnel issues that have been brought up.
So
there's, and then there are further issues of allegations of someone allowing a contractor to do certain work. So you really got three issues that I see it.
Well, the claims issue will handle itself by the process, but I'm talking about basically, is it going to be on the council communications next month? Yes? Yes?
Under advice from our solicitor, his advice is that it be in an executive session.
Well, the constituents talk to the administration, so I guess that question would be to them, really.
I think within what can be done, if council wants an update from the administration on the status of its review of this issue, I think that's appropriate to be put under communications, to be brought back to the council. And I hope I'm answering the question.
Don't misconstrue why the discussion was stopped. There were two issues. One, there were things that were brought up that are not part of the docket. She can make her allegations, but a response to those allegations is not on the docket. It's only for public speaking. That's number one. Number two, the other portion was out of caution, because as the solicitor has said, there were allegations about particular city employees. Whether they are named or not, they are part of a group that has the right to be represented.
So I'll ask you then, as council president, what's your recommendation that we should go with this?
I think I would let the process proceed on the claims, and we'll expect the administration to give us a report. I think reasonably would be within the next week. Could we have an updated report on that?
Yes, we'll have something for you in 1 week from today.
Okay. Councilman Navarro.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that, our council members, Councilman Santa Maria, that's his ward, that's his constituent, that as soon as the administration has an answer and it's going to communicate it to the constituent, that we also get email to us or let us know what was the final outcome of what's going on, so that way it's personal, right to the council members. And it doesn't have to go to public or anything.
There are some cautions, okay? There are some cautions, because if I remember correctly in the letter that was presented and the neighbor's allegations, part of it involved some statements that were made or said or created by a police officer. So we're also dealing with, on another level, with the police officer's Bill of Rights.
I just wanted to be included in the response. I mean,
Again, the response, again, we'll have to,
Deputy, the Director Cordy said that he was gonna get back in touch with the constituent.
no, he did not. He said,
He said he was gonna contact.
no, he said he was going to report to the council
No, I'm
within
sorry.
1 week.
You can read that back. He said to her, when he knows after the investigation's done, he will let her know. That's what he said.
That was the investigation, but
So I just want to make sure that we also get contacted when that happens.
right, but the week time frame was for the administration to get back to the council to determine where the next step was, because the Councilman Santa Maria's question was, at what forum are we going to hear this? So you'll hear from administration within a week.
All right, so we're going to get a report within a week.
No, you're not going to get a report.
You're going to get some,
There's never going to be a report, okay, from our office dictating work product over the internet before a claim is filed, okay? That's never going to happen.
Okay,
Never going to happen.
all right, but they're going to file the claim.
Because that's discoverable if we get sued. We're protecting the city money here and evaluating a claim. There's two competing interests. We have to address the validity of the claim, and let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's see if the claim is valid. It's the first I've heard of it tonight. No disrespect to you. Okay? Okay, we'll talk.
All right,
I'm talking to the council right now, thank you. But there will never be a attorney work-client privilege from my office circulated over the internet before a claim is
okay,
adjudicated.
so let me
That
ask
will
you
never happen.
What report am I getting next month then?
Why don't we wait until a claim is filed so that we can properly adjust this claim in the claims committee where it belongs? The claims committee meets in a couple of weeks, doesn't it, Steve? I mean, Chairman Stikos of the claims committee, for those of you who aren't on the claims committee, I think does an excellent job, and he hears everyone's opinion, he doesn't shut anyone out, and whoever has a point of view gets to be heard. And that's the appropriate place where a claim is adjusted.
That was never a question, but she was told that by Jerry that she'd get an answer within a week.
I didn't
You
hear
said
that.
in 1 week.
What I said, Councilman, is I was asked when council could get an update. Not a report, an update. Council, not Ms. Pepperell, I believe.
So I used the wrong word. So we're going to
What
get
I
an
told Ms.
update next-
Pepperell was after the solicitor's office was finished with his evaluation, she would be contacted.
All right, so I'm getting an update next week, or we are going to get an update next week, and it's still going to be on the calendar next month. Is that a correct assumption?
Again, this is potential litigation here. The city's treasurer is at stake. What Mr. Cordy said, he will update the council next week. With regard to a report to the council, if you want a communication from the administration updating you publicly, it'll be a limited communication if there's a threat of a lawsuit in order to protect the city. I mean, until the facts are out. And as Council President said, you've got Police Officer Bill of Rights perhaps involved. You certainly have the open meetings law provisions on employees. So
Understand all that.
just want to make sure we're doing it right.
Okay. Thank you.
Joe, all set?
Thank you.
And again, you said a month, but understand the process of claims. It has to be filed first, so it will come to the council as new business at the next council meeting to be referred to the Claims Committee for that following meeting.
It sounds to me like we're not going to get to the bottom of this. That's what it sounds like.
Resolution urging the mayor to look into the feasibility of creating pedestrian access between Post Office and Auburn Library. An update on that?
Yes, Council President. The resolution was passed February 28th. The mayor responded in his letter March 18th. Between the budget season and the director's departure, it fell into a crack. So now that this was brought to my attention as a result of the docket, I've assigned this to Deputy Director Capuano to follow up on it for us. There are a number of things that need to be looked into in order to reach a resolution. They're outlined in the mayor's letter.
So you should hear by the next meeting? Could we keep this on the docket?
We can certainly give you a lot of information. Whether or not it'll be resolved by then, I can't say, but keep it on the docket.
Keep us an update, okay. Is that okay, Councilman
Let me
Stichels?
just hear clear. Is this being assigned to somebody now? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, sir. While you were talking, I was explaining what took the delay.
This issue now to somebody?
Yes, sir, I am. It's a resolution. I'm sorry?
Who was handling it before?
Unfortunately, what I described was it fell in a crack between the budget season and the departure of the last director.
The City Council's next regular meeting will be held on Monday, October 24th at 7 o'clock. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?